Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, man. I'm excited to be sharing with you all this morning and truly grateful, right? Truly grateful. Just grateful to be on this Zoom this morning, sharing some nuggets, right? Some things that I hope um, you can use not only to grow your business, but just in life period and just to navigate through your day. All right. So I love these AM power calls, and that's what I'm truly grateful about. I mean, the leadership, right, that's being exemplified on these Zooms every single morning, right, Monday through Friday. I mean, it's just truly a blessing to get that type of pouring into, right, to get that type of knowledge and, and support from the leadership in this company. Something to truly be grateful about. I mean, just listen to James, right? He had a couple extra pages in my journal yesterday, and man, that training that Eric Carter, aka Easy, did on time, right? Man, did that really cause some awareness in my life and probably some of you all too, and just the different nuggets and the transparency that I wish I would have had when I first got involved in this industry. And so that's something to truly be grateful about. And I believe everything starts with gratitude. And if you woke up this morning with gratitude, right? Just put a two in the chat, man. Let us know that you're grateful this morning, right? If nothing else, to be on the right side of the dirt with an opportunity to do it all again is enough to be grateful for, man. It definitely is. And so I said, man, I was struggling a little bit this morning, a little bit under the weather, a little achy from traveling, but I'm grateful, So I got my detox with my V Daily Mix, and I took my Vital Boost and my Vital, right? I'm grateful for these amazing products to really rejuvenate, replenish, and get me through my day. And so I see all the twos in the chat. I see all the twos in the chat, and so send a dove to someone you love and let them know that we're about to get started this morning, guys. And I just want to touch on a few things this morning that that I've dealt with. A lot of times when I come on these Zooms and fortunate enough to share and and hope it doesn't fall on deaf ears, right? I just want to share experiences that I have went through in this industry. I've been in this industry for 26 years. I've seen it all, I've done it all. I've got the shirt and the hat, and went back and got a couple more. All right, some of you all, I know James asked another day about people's experience in their time and their tenure. They've been in the industry, and man, I've seen people that've been in the industry longer than me. That's probably been through more than I have, and and it's just from a mentorship standpoint. And even though it's great to have mentorship, it's great to have coaching, right? It's great to have accountability partner in this space. We still have to show up and do the work, all right? And I think the work on ourselves is the hardest work that we have to do, to look in the mirror and face ourselves and have that awareness and hold each other accountable is something that a lot of times is the hardest thing to do, right? And I know that's something that I had to do. And I remember having a mentor, and I remember, being a know-it-all and thought I had it all under control, and really, you know, having a mindset and a paradigm at that time not to really listen to people because that's just who I was. And so I didn't know when I got involved in this industry that I had to work on me, right? Have you ever met anybody? Have you ever met anyone, right, that had the potential, but couldn't get out their own way, right? If you know somebody like that, put a one in the chat, right? It might be you, right? I know it definitely was me. I just, I couldn't get out my own way. And I remember my mentor asking me, and I think I was about 25 years old at the time. And he said, hey, he said, hey, man, he said, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? Right? He said, do you want to be right or do you want to be rich? He said, if I can get you out your own way, right? He said, if I can change your mindset, if I can change your paradigm, if I can change your way of thinking, then I can change how you earn money. And that stuck with me for a long time. And I realized that a lot of that was wrapped around ego, right? It was wrapped around ego, man. And ego it could be devastating to not only your business, right, but to your relationships too as well. And those are things, right? And so if I had to name this training this morning, it would definitely be check your ego at the door, right? And we have to do that sometimes. 'Cause a lot of times we're standing in the way of our own success. We're standing in the way of our own growth, right? A lot of times we're standing in the way of our own abilities or superpowers, right? Because of our ego. And guys, the problem with ego in business is, ego says, I already know this, right? I already know that. That was my problem. I know how to do this, right? I know what I'm doing. Growing up in a single parent home, and raised with tough love, but not really having a father figure around. I had to grow up pretty fast, and so I developed a mindset of, if it's going to happen, if we're going to have it was up to me, and so I had to grow up and be a man really quick, right? I moved out the house at the age of 17 and started taking care of myself, and so I never really developed that mindset of heeding to mentorship, to listening to people that went before me that were successful, right? That I've already done. And so I felt that I had it, right? Ego also avoids correction and accountability. Man, that's a good one. I'm gonna say that again. Right? Ego avoids correction and accountability. Right? It prevents us from correcting ourselves. It prevents us from taking advice and taking counseling for those that only offering constructive criticism, right? That are trying to guide you through the process. They're trying to put you in a position to so you can avoid the things that they went through. And a lot of times we avoid correction because our ego gets in the way, right? We sometimes don't hold ourselves accountable. And these are the things that I had to understand so I could grow. We say the acronym for ego is edging God out, right? And anytime you take God out of the process, you stunt your growth because He's the key to evolvement, right? Our spirit, our soul has a desire for expansion and expression. And it's hard to expand and express and pour into others and help others grow when our ego is in the way. See, ego wants the spotlight, not the sacrifice. See, that one hurt, right? That one hurt. A lot of times we want the spotlight, but we don't want to make the sacrifices to put ourselves out front. And it's not that you want to be out front, but a lot of times you have to lead from the front. But a lot of times when we lead for the front, our ego gets in the way. And we don't want to make the sacrifices that it takes. And sacrifices maybe doing some of the things that you don't want to do, right? Reading the books that you don't want to read, listen to audios that you don't want to listen to, right? Being patient in the process. A lot of times we don't want to sacrifice those things because we want to put our ego in check. Right? Ego focuses on how we look instead of how we serve. Right? I remember I wanted to be the flyest person in the room. Right? I remember those days because I thought that when I saw the tailored suits and I saw the nice shoes and I saw the people that was under in front of the room that was eloquently speaking, and I wanted to be that person, but I didn't want to go through the things that it took to get there. I didn't want to go through the process. I just wanted to show up and look good, right? I didn't, I didn't understand that my leader was getting there early before anybody else got there, and back then was carrying the TV and the VCR, and I remember the board with the duct tape on it, and setting up the room, and make sure the chairs were set up, and making sure that the banners were in place on the walls, and making sure the everything was working and ready, because he understood that the results were more important. See, ego creates friction, right? But humility, guys, it creates momentum. Right? I mean, that's powerful when you understand that a lot of times ego creates friction in the growth of your organization. But when you're leading from the front with humility, when you're making sure that, hey, I want to make sure the room is set up right. What can I do? right? To make sure that the people in the room get the results, right? That the people that sacrificed and had to leave their kids for that hour or that 2 hours, that 3 hours to be at that event, people that called in and moved their schedules around, people that picked up that 10,000 pound gorilla, right? And had that phone and made those calls. I want to make sure that that everything is set up and the energy is right, so the results are there, right? And a lot of times, because of ego, those things are getting away. It causes friction, right? And I understood that humility, right? Humility is how you should serve. And so the next thing I want to talk about real quick is just servant leadership. I believe that servant leadership is the antidote to ego, right? I truly believe that. I truly believe that servant leadership. I read in a book about a king, right? And he was going to be the king of all kings, and his name will be exalted on high, and there should be no greater name than his. And he was born on a manger on the floor, the same place where the animals would lay at, right? And he came riding in on a donkey, and man, if that wasn't humility, right? But he wanted people to understand that I'm here to serve. That's why I'm here, right? I'm here to serve. And so, you have to show up for your team, ladies and gentlemen, even when it's inconvenient. And a lot of times it's going to be very inconvenient, right? A lot of times you're going to have to show up when you don't want to show up, right? A lot of times you're going to have to show up in a room, and sometimes I remember showing up in a room where the person that hosted the event didn't even show up. I was there by myself. How many people went through that before, right? Like I said, 26 years, I've seen it all. I mean, drove those 6 hours, got to that event, and I was the only one in the room. That'll humble you, right? But I kept showing up. And I kept showing up because that's what leaders do. They show up, and when they show up to serve. Ask more questions than you give direction, right? What can I do to make this a successful event? What can I do? Right? I never ask people on the team, right, when you're going to hit that next rank, when you're going to go diamond, when you're going to go gold, when you're going to go triple diamond. I never ask that. What can I do to help you get binary qualified? What can I do to help you increase your paycheck? What can I do to help you get to that next rank? What can we do, right, to change the direction of your business because you say people are not showing up? Let's find out what's going on in the process, right? And a lot of times as leaders, we dictate. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. Everybody knows that everybody has their own journey. Everybody knows where their leadership level is at, right? And so ask more questions, right? This is not a dictatorship. We were here to serve, guys, right? Put people before production, right? Because if you put people before production, the production will follow, right? Put people before production. When you have a dictatorship and you want people to produce, right? Put the people first. Find out what their needs are. Find out what they're going through. Right? I wish that when I was coming up in this industry, that people would have had personal conversations with me, and we would have had those conversations, that dialogue, so we could have figured out where the block was, right? And then I could have worked on that. I could have worked on that. But like I said, I was in my own way. I was in my own way of growth. And a lot of times we do that. We get in our own way, right? And so, guys, leaders who pour into others create duplication, not just admiration. There's nothing wrong with being admired, but people don't care how much. We've heard this before until they know how much you care, right? Until they know how much you care. And so we have to understand, guys, that we want to pour into people. We want to pour into people, right? And so we want to help the growth process. And how you help the growth process? You nurture those individuals, right? You nurture the people on your team. I tell you, servitude, right? Servitude, man, will definitely impact the magnitude of the growth of your business. Focus on results, guys, right? Focus on results. And this one's good. Focus on results, not just the money. And I had to learn that because, hey, let me tell you something. I needed some money, right? There's one thing I know I needed. I needed some money. I wanted to get out of my situation bad. I wanted to change my environment. I wanted to change my well-being, right? I wanted to change a lot of things. I knew money took that, but I was so focused on the money, right, that I was chasing it. I was, and what I should have been chasing is the impact. I love that slide on our presentations where it talks about it, wealth, health, wealth, and impact, right? Chase the impact. When you know that you have products that impacts people's lives in such an amazing way, when you hear the testimonies and I tell you that has humbled me too. Being in a company where people get in front of the room and the products have changed people's lives to a point where they're tearing up in front of the room because the product has such an impact, right? And when you chase impact, the money's going to come, right? Money is just a byproduct of consistent results, And so what I started focusing on the results, right? And I started producing those results through action. And I understood the money doesn't come first, the action comes first. Then the results follow the action, and then the money comes. And so I said, if I want the money to be consistent, then I need to be consistent on my actions. And if I want my actions to be consistent, then I have to be consistent. And not just consistent in doing the business, not just consistent in doing the daily activities and having a daily method of operation. No, but be consistent in my growth. Be consistent on what it takes to be a great leader. And I'm still learning, right? I'm still growing. I mean, coming from a situation where, you know, I, I was, to the point where I was a decision maker in that company, right? To go from having thousands of people in your organization to come to where, man, it's multiple leaders. It's layers and layers of leadership. I tell people all the time, I say, I feel like a samurai in this company because, iron sharpens iron, right? And you have people like David, who's created 21 millionaires. That'll humble you fast. You have people like Alex, who's made 8 figures in this industry, right? And you have, what I'm saying, you have people like James, who's such a creative mind. We're so grateful for the things that he does, and I go on and on. Daniel, right? What he does for the field, and you start looking at these amazing minds, these amazing individuals, and then the doctors, and then the people that, like Dr. Tony, pour in the process, and you're looking, and you're like, man, what I'm saying? I'm a small fish in a big pond now. That's humbling, right? And so you walk into that situation based on the things that you did in the past, and the first thing that happens is you forget to check your ego at the door, and then you come in with a sense of entitlement. I'm supposed to have this. I'm supposed to be mentioned. I'm supposed to, right? And you have a sense of entitlement. But none of that matters. Can you do it again? Right? Can you do it again? And then you understand and say, hey, I got to roll up my sleeves, right? I got to put my hands in the dirt and I have to serve, right? And so, guys, if you chase the money, you'll burn out. You'll burn out. But if you chase the results, I promise you the money will chase you, right? So, as we bring this thing to the close, man, and we do a call to action this week, when you get off this Zoom, when you pick up the phone, when you're communicating with your team, when you're communicating with your prospects, when you're communicating with people, period, right? Audit your motives. And I'll say that again, audit your motives, right? Are you doing it because you have something to prove? Are you doing it because you truly want to build something? Because you truly want to have impact? And I would make a suggestion that you lead with humility because humility will always keep you hungry, right? When you check the ego and you get rid of the sense of entitlement because of things you've done in the past and you get in a place of humility, and you understand that, hey, I'm not the big shot. And then you start to develop that hunger again, right? And we start to develop that hunger again. Then you get back in the mindset of, I got to do the work. Not only do I got to do the work on myself, but I got to actually do the work. I actually got to serve. I actually got to find out what people on the team need to grow. What do they need to get to the next level? What book can I suggest? What one-on-ones can I do? Who can I bring in? Right? Because I understand that I'm not the person, right? So who can I bring in to assist, to help with the growth of my team? And so you have to check your ego at the door, pick up your purpose, and get to work, right? And get to work. And the first person you have to work on is yourself, guys. And true leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. And in my journey, it was a scripture that always kept me humble. It always kept me grounded. And that was Matthew 23 and 12, man. It said, whoever exalts himself will be humble, and whoever humbles himself will be exalted. Right? And that's a true statement. Born in a manger, next to the animals, rode in on a donkey, and no name has ever been exalted as high as Jesus, right? And so our scripture sticks with me. It keeps me humble. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me rooted. And it allows me to do the work. It allows me to serve. Because once you get to the top of the mountain, guys, that's not the end of your destination. It just allows you to see further. And if you can see further, right, that means you can bring people along with you. The journey never quits. It never stops. Matter of fact, when my eyes close and they turn the lights out and they throw the dirt on me, I'm anxious and excited to embark on the next journey. Right. And so that being said, man, I appreciate you guys for jumping on and just sharing this time with me and spending this time with me. And I'm truly grateful for that. And I appreciate you all for letting me share. And I hope that you all enjoy the balance of your day, right? And you audit your motives and you continue to help people grow and you continue to serve. Appreciate you all and thank you.